You know, I had a wonderful mentor and professor, Dr. Paul Torrance from the University of Georgia, that actually opened my eyes for the whole brain and all the value attached to the whole brain. And then while studying under him at the university, I began to develop these instruments. I began with the 4-quadrant instruments. In those years, there was a lot of research done on the 4-quadrant and the 4-dimensional thinking and doing, and I just latched onto that and started to develop my own instruments. The first one I developed was for adults, and then later on I started to develop instruments for children, starting with the high school child of about 15 to 18 years, and then later on also one for primary school. And that was very, very important to me, because if a child can understand his or her thinking patterns and what does it mean in relationships, what does it mean to understand my parents, if I'm comfortable with my 4-quadrant thinking, I'm okay to realize that I may be a kind of a rational person, or I may be a very sort of focused person, but my sister or my brother is not. And instead of causing conflict because they're different to what I am, I now understand them, and it's just better for relationships. And the earlier you can understand that, it's just better. And so for me, it was important to develop the primary school instruments also in those early years. So those were the first 3 of the 4-quadrant instruments that I developed. Later on, I added other instruments like the skills, negativity, and a number of instruments for people who play different kinds of sport. But for me, the breakthrough came about 10 years ago when I realized that understanding the human being from 4 quadrants is not enough. And so what I started to do, the research that I started to do, was to split the different quadrants into 2 dimensions. So for instance, if you are, in our language, an R2 person, that would mean you are a people's person. You relate well to people, you get your energy from people, and you'd like to be in a world where there's people. But it was very clear that there are different kinds of people's people. And the research started to show me that there are people that are more socializing people. They are in a people's world, or they want to be in a people's world where there are crowds and groups and teams. But then you have another kind of people's people, the kind that want to be like one-on-one, that likes to be intimate, and the more empathizing kind of people. So that is the way that I split the R2 brain into empathizers and into socializers. Again, if you're an R1 person, for instance, you like to see the big picture, you have a passion for unorthodox thinking and so on. There are 2 kinds of people here. The one is the imagineering kind of person who plays around with sometimes crazy ideas, weird ideas, uses the imagination. And then there's another kind, the one that likes to probe the future, to see the big picture, to strategize. So again, I split that quadrant into strategists and imagineers. And so the A dimension eventually just gave us much more information than what the 4-quadrant could ever do. And of course, the same is true for the left brain, where the 4 dimensions or the 4 quadrants can give you a particular kind of information. The A dimensions, as I said, just gives you much more. For instance, the L1 brain, the more logical, rational kind of person, factual person, that here too, I found that there's a split. You have people that tend to focus, the realist. They like to deal with information. They like to work with facts and reality. And then you have the analyst, the same quadrant, still the same quadrant, but the analyst, they like to dig deeper. They want to find out. They probe, they investigate. So they're both in the same quadrant, but basically 2 different kinds of people. And then the L2, now the L2 brain was an interesting kind of brain. It is the part of the brain that wants to organize everything. That the moment you deal with information, or you obtain information, the L2 wants to put it in a system. I try to explain it in this kind of way. If you're thinking about next week and you have about 5 appointments, and you're thinking of 5 different people, that would be L1. A specific thinking is L1. But what do you do with those 5 people? You go to your diary and you put it in a certain order. And the moment your brain goes into the order, that's L2 brain. So again, but there we split it. In the L2, the 2 particular dimensions is, the one is the more traditional kind of thinker and doer, the person who goes back to the experience, the one who sort of depends on things that worked in the past. That is the one particular kind of dimension in the L2. The second is, as I said, the organizer, the one that likes to organize, the one that works in routines, in systems, and so on. So, you know, in a very nutshell, that is the 8 dimensions. And as I said, it takes you much closer to understanding yourself, first of all, you know, where your dominance is, but also